94.7 The Pulse. That was Jimmy Barnes and John Farnham, When Something Is Wrong With My Baby. My next guest on the line is well-known children's illustrator and Australia Day Order of Australia medal recipient Robert Ingpen. Now, welcome to the program, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today. Now, what an honour to receive such an award. How are you feeling?
Well, a bit stunned because it hits you unexpectedly. I mean, many things in life are going to sort of happen perhaps one day, but something like this is unexpected and you're a bit stunned, and I'm not quite sure what it all means yet, but I suppose I'll find out in time.
Oh, lovely. You're certainly a well-known name around the town, or around Australia for that matter, and you've done some wonderful works, and that's, Jungle Book, The Dream Keeper, Ugly Duckling, Peter Pan, Poppykettle. Poppykettle is my favourite. Now, can you tell us a little bit about Poppykettle and how it all eventuated?
Well, it's a long story because for many Geelong people, they'll be aware that we've been celebrating in Geelong District Poppykettle Day now for 26 years.
26, is it? Wow.
Year is this year, and on the 23rd of March, or the 22nd of March and the 23rd of March, we're doing it again, but it's a very special one this year. But what goes back beyond that 26 years was the writing of the initial story, The Voyage of the Poppykettle.
Yes.
And the preparation and publishing of it as a book. And of course, when I wrote the story for children as an imaginative attempt to explain some facts that didn't seem to have an explanation about the settlement of Geelong and things that happened in Peru that I learnt about when I was working over there, I never thought that the story was going to get outside the book, as it were, and become the subject of celebrating amongst primary school children their imagination. On one day in Johnson's Park a year, and in the art gallery and in the Performing Arts Centre and things. And the connection between the book, Voyage of the Poppykettle, and Poppykettle Day is almost mysterious, almost can't be fathomed or explained.
It's just gorgeous. It must mean so much to you to have instigated that day.
Well, I can't claim to have instigated the day. The day was instigated by educators. I mean, there was the wonderful head of the education department in Geelong district, Reg Fisher, who and some of his colleagues as headmasters of various primary schools. I remember Tate Street School and
Yes.
Newtown and Jewel primary schools. Mandama and these schools all got the notion that it would be possible, with a bit of effort, to get primary school classes out of the classroom into the public place to celebrate that which they do better than anybody else at any other age as children.
Yes.
Their imagination.
They do.
And they called it Poppykettle Day, so it wasn't my doing. I just provided
provided the material.
Material, I suppose.
But still, it's a lovely association, isn't it?
Yeah, in some sort of way I've had a vague connection over that time, and still remain a sort of advisor or help to the Geelong Performing Arts Centre and the Art Gallery and people like that when framing the theme for each year.
Yes. Well, it's wonderful, and it's enjoyed by so many of our primary school children. I mean, they just look forward to it, and of course they dress up, and it's a real festival.
And they dress up and they grow up, because I'm probably talking to, if I'm not wrong, somebody who could call themselves a Poppykettle kid.
I certainly am, and I do have a lot of fond memories of being a Poppykettle kid, and we used to track down to Johnson's Park every year, and of course we've got the Poppykettle fountain too, which is down on the waterfront too now.
Well, it's been moved, actually.
Yeah, because it never used to be there.
When you were a kid, it was out by the Royal Geelong Yacht Club.
That's right.
But it was mysteriously relocated one night, not by thieves and vandals, but by the authorities, and reassembled somewhere else. But that fountain was a little bit separate than Poppykettle Day. But it was nevertheless, it celebrated the possibility in one's imagination of our settlement in Australia happening on the foreshore of Geelong 400 years ago by a handful of rather weather and sea-soaked hairy Peruvians who arrived in an old clay pot.
Or an oversized kettle, so to speak.
Or an oversized kettle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not quite sure. We don't know. Nobody has actually uncovered and discovered the actual Poppykettle.
Oh, okay.
We know it lies deep in the hillside at Limeburners Point,
yes.
Eastern Gardens, but nobody's got permission or authority to dig for it yet.
Oh.
So it remains a mystery as to just how big it was, and therefore how big the hairy Peruvian dolls were. But we know that they were quite small because this was a huge land that they were dumped in, and they must have been big on courage, big on imagination, but small in stature.
Yes, well, that's true too. Now, how long have you been painting? I mean, the illustrations you do are just beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. I've been illustrating sort of forever. As a kid, I drew more than I perhaps should have done with the neglect of more serious pursuits. But I was able, through luck, to continue through life to just making pictures that help tell stories through drawing and painting. And as an illustrator, I'm as comfortable as I guess I'll ever be.
Oh, that's wonderful. How do you describe the business of making pictures?
Of making pictures, the way I make pictures as an illustrator, you first need to have a story, a written story.
Yes.
And know that story contains evidence of stuff that's going to interest a reader. Not just any story, but something that has got happenings and events and characters that people are going to be interested in. Because if they're not interested in the story, then you're not going anywhere.
Yes.
But often the opportunity comes to colour in or to picture that story with illustration. And you choose to illustrate events or show the likeness to characters that can't easily be completely portrayed by words. And then you go about making a picture, simply drawing it on a piece of paper and colouring it in and reproducing it mostly in a book. But the trick is to not lose your reader by giving them a picture that you would like to see and that they mightn't be interested in seeing. So you've always got to leave, in my belief, is something in that picture of space available for their minds to occupy and
Wonderful.
Connect up with the story.
Definitely.
And that's why some of the pictures you see in books that I do don't seem to be absolutely completely finished, that there's spaces and places where your mind can spend time filling in for yourself. And that makes a child, at least, often feel that the story belongs to them and they can feel comfortable with being able to tell the story to somebody else.
Lovely. Now, have you got a favourite thing that you love drawing the most?
Not really, because you end up, when you're illustrating many stories, and I'm doing classic stories at the moment,
yes.
By having the need to illustrate all sorts of things, some of which you like drawing, some which you don't. But in September this year, another book in the series of classics that I'm doing will be released to mark the centenary of the writing of Wind in the Willows.
Oh, wonderful.
And I have to say the illustrations that I did for that were some of the most enjoyable things I've done.
Oh, I can imagine. I love the Wind in the Willows too.
It meant that you were dealing with 4 or 5 characters who were sort of on stage for the whole of the book, and they're Ratty and Mole and Badger and Toad. And, you know, it was just such a comfortable romp through one of the great stories to illustrate that.
Oh, it's a lovely privilege that you have to do, isn't it?
I've been lucky. It is a privilege to be asked to illustrate those great old classic stories so that they're kept in print and available again for modern children.
It's wonderful, isn't it? And I think it's such an important history for our children to have those novels and hold them close to their heart. So it's great to see that you're keeping them alive, so to speak.
Well, I find that it's a real thrill to be invited to do it. There seems to be a lot of point in making the effort to do this, whereas in some cases, you feel at times, well, this needn't really be done. It's not going to make much difference. But in this case, with these Peter Pans and Treasure Islands and Jungle Books and Wind in the Willows and things, you know that it's part of an effort of conservation of literature.
Yes, it is. No, it's wonderful. Now, Robert, how long would it take you to compile a book full of illustrations?
These books contain up to 100 illustrations. They're big books.
Yes.
Some of the illustrations are big ones and there's lots of little ones. And so many months are involved in planning the book to contain so many pictures and planning which pictures and which events will come together or not come together, is often the case. I mean, a lot of famous events in classic storytelling are better off not illustrated because sometimes the imagination in the writing is sufficient.
That's so true.
The reader build for themselves their own picture of a character or something. So it's a case of deciding what to do and what not to do, and that takes a long time. The final illustrations don't take long at all to do. Maybe a day or two for each one.
Wow.
But the preliminary planning to put your mind into a gear that lets you know or your hand know what's to be done is fairly time consuming.
I can imagine. Well, look, it's lovely to talk to you. I just have to ask you lastly, have you got a favourite out of all of them? Is Poppykettle your favourite out of all the books you've illustrated?
Well, I think it is because it's got out of the book.
Yes.
All stories start or are read from a book, but when a story, like a piece of folk tale or myth, leaves the book and gets into the open world, then it has to be special, and you have to be very careful with it, and therefore Poppykettle, for me, does the trick, and particularly in that it's got a bigger future now than it had in the past. Because this year's Poppykettle is going to be so special.
It is.
So special, and when you hear about it, and when your listeners hear what it is, you'll say, yes, that's just what we should be doing at the moment.
It's wonderful, isn't it? And I have to tell you quickly that March 22nd is in fact my birthday. How about that?
How about that? That's Thursday this year.
So I'm a real Poppykettle kid.
You are indeed. Indeed. Well, you might like to spend a bit of your birthday away from your work over a microphone and go down to Johnson's Park and see what's happening.
I would love to, and no doubt my children will be participating in the day, so it should be fantastic. Yes,
good.
Yes,
good.
They will be.
Well, I hope they enjoy what's coming up, the surprise that's ahead of them when they get to school this year and realise what they've got to do to do Poppykettle this year.
Fantastic. I'm sure they'll look forward to that. Well, look, Robert, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm very happy that such an award has been bestowed on you, and I couldn't think of a more fitting person, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, and keep up the wonderful, wonderful work.
Thank you. I'll try to.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye.
Illustrator of children's books, Robert Ingpen there, and very famous for the Poppykettle. And if you don't know what Poppykettle is, get on the Google and Google it, and you'll find out it's Poppykettle and Geelong go hand in hand. So a wonderful little tale there, and beautifully illustrated by Robert Ingpen. All right, stay with us here on 94.7 The Pulse as we continue.